Hi, it's Chris with Implied Music, and I'm recording this on Satie's birthday. Eric Satie, the uh, French classical composer, long since dead. Well worth taking a look at him. But listen, we're going to go from the perhaps sublime to a little bit of the ridiculous because I want to talk about Coldplay. Today, let's take a look at a couple of Coldplay tunes and talk about how um, suspensions really help us make our chord progressions sound better, and how the use of melodic extensions make our melodies a little more sophisticated. Well, listen, thanks for being here. First of all, if this is the second or third video of mine you've seen and you're getting something out of the channel, you're not subscribed, please subscribe now. It's great for the channel. Comments are great for the channel. I'm trying to grow the channel into a community of composers, songwriters, artists, producers who are interested in music theory, the ideas of the sort of like fundamental practices of music, not from an academic point of view, but rather as just something to use to support and extend their own work. I hope this is music theory for everyone. Let's review a couple of basic things about simple triads and how extensions and suspensions work within them. And then we'll dive into the tunes. And also, I think maybe at the end, I'll give you an example of something I wrote myself using some of those ideas. Well, I know you remember that a triad consists kind of most of the time of 3 tones. And in the key of C, this C triad is C, E, and G. We name those tones root, third, and fifth. And there are extensions, 7th, 9th, and, there's an 11th up there too, sharp 11th. It can go further, but for the time being, let's just stick with that. Now, we can also sort of fold downwards, right? There's no reason why we can't do the root, third, and fifth, and then add the 9th in the middle. This says add 2, and I think that's kind of smart because really it does feel like it's the 2nd instead of the 9th because it's not way up on the top. We can also do this. Take that 3rd and change it to a 4th. Well, there's something really powerful about those 2 sounds. That suspension propels us towards something. And by the same token, this suspension, the C2, can propel us upwards. And also there's something really great about, I played a little bit loud there, but the strength of this 4th, right? Well, that's what we find in these Coldplay tunes. So I'm going to hop back to the Viva la Vida. And it begins, I've transposed it to the key of G just for the purposes of teaching today. It starts off with this interesting sound where there's a very simple plain C chord with no third, and then the root goes up, which is really cool. And theoretically, that's a D chord. In fact, it's D sus 7. It has a 7th, it doesn't have a third, and it has this 4th replacing the 3rd. Cool, right? And we simply smooth ourselves out to G and then down to E minor. And of course, you guys are familiar with the way that sounds. It sounds terrific. Chunking, 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 chunking. Now this is what really sort of captured my attention when I sort of started looking at the melody, because the E minor chord sort of finishes. We get basically 4, 5, 1, 6. And then the melody begins on a B, which is, easily the 5th of the E minor chord, but it stays there for the C chord. And so now that major 7th is over the C. You can see the major 7th and the C there. And then the melody drops down to an A. And so that A, surprisingly, over a D chord, sticks around as we go to the G chord. This is a classic example of preparing a dissonance, taking a tone which we know will eventually be a little bit exciting and weird, inserting it into a prior chord and letting it live in a tense way into the next chord. B is the fifth of E minor, but it's the major seventh of C. How beautiful. A is the fifth of D, in this case D sus7, but it's the ninth of G. And then we go back down to the E minor. B is the fifth of E minor, but the seventh of C. A is the fifth of D sus, but it's the ninth of G. That's what makes this tune rock, right? We know this. We've heard it a million times. Did you ever think to yourself, why does that melody sound so good? Prepared dissonance. Mozart would have known. Beethoven would have known. Bach would have known. All right, so then we get to the big chorus moment. And really, in this tune, the chords never change because why would they? It's working. This is the nature of pop music. And in fact, if you think about the name of this band, Coldplay, you know what a cold call is? You call somebody up and you say, really, I'd like to sell you this. I want to work with you. A cold call is a call that has to work the first time you hear it. How do you write a song that works the first time somebody hears it? You've got to base your choices on things which are familiar, but that also present elements of surprise and delight. We want to be sort of kind of startled a little bit, but not too much. And so the tension of those suspended chords, coupled with what is essentially kind of a really simple chord progression, give us that kind of mixture, that beautiful kind of alchemical satisfaction that good pop music can lay out for us. Also great vocals, great playing, all that stuff. So here we are. E down to D, stay on the D to B. Well, there's no real big surprise in any of that, but I do think it's kind of satisfying and just have that big melody kind of rise way up there. And of course, E is the third of C. We go down to the root of D, no big deal. Stay on the D, it's the fifth of G, and then down to the B. Honestly, we're just staying on chord tones there, so props. Chorus. It's a chorus, right? The scientist uses similar types of tricks. And actually, we'll take a look at how the melody uses repeated motifs that are surprising within the context. But I think we'll find some suspensions. Chord progression flows D minor, B flat, down to F. D minor, 7. B flat to F. To F2. I like that F2 a lot. This D minor 7 to B flat to F, and then here's the F2, and you can see I've taken the third of the chord and replaced it with the ninth, and it gives us a sense of propulsion. And when we push back to the A, the top note for the D minor 7, we feel like we've got somewhere. Well, the chord progression isn't as completely regular in The Scientist, but what interests me is the use of this melodic figure. So you know this melodic figure. First of all, just beautiful, right? And the figure itself sounds really different depending on what chord we're playing it over. Like, I love the way in the D minor chord, it just feels really kind of normal. It's just within the chord, right? But when we get to B flat, we get the ninth, the C, and then the major seventh, the A. Much more tension involved in that. And it's a use of, it's a very sophisticated use of the preparation of dissonance. It's not just a single prepared tone, it's a figure which sounds completely different as it gets reharmonized. Let's do it over some other chords. I promised you an example of something just like this, but not this that's new, that kind of I wrote myself. So let's take a look at that. So here's my chord progression, and I want it to work as a cold call to my audience. So I've got simply G, B minor, E minor, C. That's my chord progression. And I think I could probably just play it like this and feel like I'm playing the progression, right? But I wanted to give it a little energy, a little propulsion. So let's take a look at how I decided to voice it. First of all, we want to use some suspensions. So the first thing I do is put the ninth on the top, and it gives me immediate energy in the chord. And then you can see here, I've suspended it for a moment up to a C. So, and then when I go to the B, I allow the G to stick around for a moment and then go down to the B minor. And E minor's next, and I'm gonna go to the second and back up again. So these little motions within the chord itself give me those vibes of propulsion. When I go to the C chord, there's the C, and I take that up to the ninth. All together. Shall we listen? I like this a lot. It sounds pretty Coldplay. And here's a little melody using extensions. Thank you, boys. Maybe we should talk a little bit about the melody. As the chord cycle is wrapping up, we get a C chord and the melody begins to pick up, but it picks up on the ninth and then steps up to the third. And now it's time for a G chord, but the melodic tone is F sharp. It's the major seventh. Why not? It works great to my ear, right? The next thing, B minor. That's just very cleanly in B minor. And then I'm going to go all the way up to the D on the top, and that's a D on top of the E minor chord. In other words, it's the minor seventh, and I'm going to leave that D there as it sort of moves into the C chord. It's a prepared dissonance. That high D becomes a low D as I go back to where I was. And now I'm going to push a little bit. There's the ninth on the G chord. And just because I like a little symmetry, I'm going to come down instead of going up. And I wind up on the E for the E chord, stays on the E for the C chord. I think it's a successful melody. suspensions, replacing the third or maybe another tone with a dissonant tone that's right next to it and then resolving back to a chord tone, propel our chords forwards. Writing melodies that take advantage of extensions of the chords that create vitality by maybe sitting on the seventh or the ninth or the second, that kind of thing really animates our song. And, you have to kind of educate your ear if you're a singer to try to get to those notes. It's a little bit easier to sing the fifth of a chord than it is to sing the sixth. But wow, there's enormous power in it. And it's the kind of thing that the best songwriters do. I think maybe maybe if I was going to bottom line it, I would just say that good songs use this technique. Well, I hope this has been useful. Like and subscribe, ding the bell. You'll be notified when I do my videos. I'll see you next time.